Seneco Kakona, Takahi. This is Miguel Sage, and the reason I'm posting this message is in response to a recent video that was posted by our brother Peter Morla concerning the names, the 5 names of Atabey. His analysis shows an incredible amount of research, for which I'm very thankful, because we all should be grateful for the amount of work and effort that Peter has put into not only studying and researching the language of our ancestors, the Taino language, based on Arawak and other language families, but also the way that he has interpreted the research that he has done to further the knowledge that we all have. I don't always agree with my brother Peter Morla on some of the conclusions that he's made, and that's one of the reasons why I have decided to make this message, because the most recent message that he posted, the most recent video he posted on the names of Atabey, his analysis leads to a lot of questions, and I want to raise those questions in this message. First things first, Peter's work on this subject is based on a number of publications, important publications, books by very knowledgeable and respected authors. He quotes José Juan Arrón and the work of José Juan Arrón, Relación acerca de las antigüedades de los indios, the relación that is José Juan Arrón's interpretation and translation back into Spanish of Ramon Pane's work that Ramon Pane did in the late 1400s, and which Ramon Pane then handed to Christopher Columbus after he was done with this. Ramon Pane wrote this work, and it included a great deal of information on Taino spiritual tradition, and included the names of Atabey, and he handed this work to Christopher Columbus. Our brother Peter also mentions this piece, Mitología Taína o Eyeri, Ramón Pane, La Relación, by Ángel Rodríguez Álvarez. He calls him Angel, but his name is Álvarez, a Boricua researcher. And of course, he also cites the work of Sebastián Rubio Lamarche, who is a man of Dominican ancestry, but works in Boriquén. Is a researcher and a scholar that have done a lot of research on the Taino sacred narrations. The first thing I need to point out is that in Peter's work that he just posted, he quotes all of these sources, and then also he quotes the original chronistas, the chroniclers, 3 in particular. Ramon Pane, of course, who is the one that wrote the Relación. He also quotes Peter Martyr or Pedro Mártir Anguera, and he quotes Las Casas, Bartolomé de las Casas. The problem that I find is that his mention of Las Casas is very cursory, very quick, and he describes it as problematic. It's a problem. Bartolomé de las Casas' addition or contribution to this issue is a problem. And I have a problem with that, because of all of these original 15th and 16th century sources, in my opinion, the one that goes furthest to clarify the issue of the words found associated with Atabey in the Chronicles is Las Casas. He's not a problem. He's the solution. So let me bring this to light. First, let's talk about the story of this narration. It's important to understand the story of the narration to then understand why I have these issues with Peter's opinion. The Relación was written by Ramon Pane, and then it was written on loose pieces of paper, and it was handed to Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus had actually ordered Ramon Pane to go there and live with the Indians and learn as much as he could from them so that he could know how to deal with them. So this guy, Pane, was an obedient servant. He did whatever he was told, and he was good at learning foreign languages. So he pretty quickly learned as much as he could of the Taino language that was spoken in that area. He learned 2 different dialects and lived with the Indians for a while and wrote down as much as he could until he ran out of paper. When he ran out of paper, he handed the work over to Christopher Columbus and said, mission accomplished, I'm getting out of here, because he really didn't like what he was doing. He did it because he was ordered to do it. He had a lot of complaints about it, which he wrote in his Relación. His complaints that he didn't have enough paper, that he didn't understand the language very well, that these people spoke goofy, that they put things, he wasn't sure whether this went in the front, this went in the back, and he was very confused, and he really was happy to complete that job and be done with it, and get back to what he really wanted to do, which was to convert the Indians to Christianity. So when he handed this piece of paper, or these papers, to Christopher Columbus then later used it for his work in controlling the Indians. Christopher Columbus got old, he died, and he left the papers to his son. His son then, in his efforts at trying to give credit to the fact that he wanted to inherit Columbus's titles that Columbus had gotten from the royal crown, wrote a book, the life of my father, the life of Christopher Columbus. And in that book, he included the Relación of Ramon Pane. After that, the original that wrote in Ramon Pane's handwriting was lost. We don't know what happened to it. There's even some suspicion by some researchers that Columbus's son himself destroyed it. I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that. The book that Christopher Columbus's son published about the life of his father, which included Ramon Pane's Relación, was read by quite a few people. Among them, these 3 people. Peter Martyr, de Anguera, which our brother Peter Morla quoted. Bartolomé Las Casas, which our brother Peter Morla kind of out of hand rejects as a problem. And another man, an Italian called Ulloa, which I think our brother Peter Morla, he mispronounced his name Ulla. I think he calls him Ulla, but it's Ulloa. Of these 3 guys, all 3 of them wrote stuff from that book, but only one of them actually copied it from cover to cover. It was Ulloa, the Italian. Ulloa actually copied the whole thing from cover to cover and translated it into Italian, changing a lot of the spelling and really mangling it, the words, the Taino words. Unfortunately, he didn't get it finished. He translated the whole thing. He had his notes and was going to put together an orderly book out of his notes, but he died. So all that was left was this disorganized pile of notes, and from that, his editors published the book, Relación acerca de las Antigüedades, by Ulloa, which is all we have, because guess what? The book that Columbus's son wrote, that has disappeared also. We don't have a copy of that. So we don't have Ramon Pane's original. We don't have Christopher Columbus's son's book that includes it. All we have is the translation into Italian that Ulloa made in prison where he died. And then we have this pile of notes. And then that went into making the version that we have now. So let's go back to Las Casas and Peter Martyr. They did write some things that came out of that book. And he didn't write the whole thing. They didn't copy it like Ulloa did. But they took little bits and pieces that they felt was important for what they did. Peter Martyr wrote some letters to a friend of his, a very high-level friend, a person of high governmental and ecclesiastical prestige, and he put it together in a book called Décadas. And I think Peter Morla mentioned Décadas. He didn't pronounce it right, but he mentioned Décadas. The Décadas include segments, excerpts from the original that Peter Martyr had read, Pedro Martir de Anguera had read in the book that was written by Columbus's son, but he didn't copy the whole thing, just little bits and pieces. Bartolomé de las Casas, and he did it, Peter Martyr translated them into Latin. So Ulloa translates it into Italian, Peter Martyr translates it into Latin, and again changes all the words to fit the Latin language so that people that spoke Latin could understand, could read it. In his opinion, he did the best he could in the spelling. So he really mangled the spelling of the Taino words. So the third guy that Peter Morla brings up is Las Casas. Of course, that's the one he dismisses as a problem. Las Casas is the only one, even though he didn't copy the whole thing, he copied parts of it, but he's the only one that actually copied it from Spanish to Spanish. He didn't translate it to any other language because Las Casas was Spanish. So he read the original from Columbus's son in Spanish, and he picked out little pieces and included them in his book in Spanish. It's important to note that because he should be trusted to have been the most faithful one in relaying these names from the original to what he did, whereas Peter Martyr and Ulloa both are translating this, Peter Martyr from Spanish to Latin, Ulloa from Spanish to Italian, and they make all kinds of changes. Another thing that's important about Las Casas that none of these other people have is that Las Casas lived with the Tainos. He lived with them. He spoke their language. He saw them day in and day out. Peter Martyr never met a Taino in his life. He lived all his life in Europe, and all he wrote about the Tainos was secondhand from things that he read other people. Ulloa, again, an Italian, never came to the Americas, never met a Taino in his life. Everything he wrote was from what he had read in Columbus's son's writing. The only one of these three guys that we know actually lived with Tainos is Bartolomé de las Casas, who dedicated his whole life to try to change the laws so that Tainos would not be held as slaves anymore. And he was medium successful, not completely successful. By the time he succeeded in abolishing the laws of slavery, there were very few Tainos left to slave. So what about Bartolomé de las Casas? What does he write about Ramon Pane's work? Well, specifically in terms of Atabey. Peter talks about the 5 names. This has become very popular with researchers. The Atabey's name, the 5 names appear on there, and what they've done, Ulloa, what Ulloa does is he puts the word Guakarapito. He never separates those two words, Guakar, Apito. He puts it all in one word, Guakarapito. You know? And the problem with that is that when researchers look at the terms, they only see 4 names. So what they've done is arbitrarily, they took Guakarapito and separated it because they felt like doing that. Guakarapito, Guakar, Apito, and then they get the 5 names. Okay? With Atabey and some of the other names. You know. And then in the case of Peter Martyr, he has that word mamona, which, you know, who knows where he got that. Maybe it's in the original and Ulloa didn't see it, or maybe he read the original by Ramon Pane. We don't know where Peter Martyr Danguera got the mamona. So what about Guakarapito? Yermao. There's another word, Yermao, Guakar. Yermao, Guakar, Apito. Las Casas suggests that when Ramon Pane was writing his report to Christopher Columbus, remember that Ramon Pane was actually not Castilian. He did not speak Castilian language perfectly. He was originally from Barcelona. He was Catalan. That's another part of the Spanish Peninsula. They don't speak what we call Spanish. They speak their own language, Catalan, which is related to Spanish. It sounds like it in a way, almost like the way Italian and Spanish sound similar. Catalan sounds like Spanish, but it's not Spanish. It's a portion of Spain that has its own language, Catalan. And that's what this guy was. He was Catalan. The way Bartolomé Las Casas puts it, Ramon Pane didn't speak Castilian, Spanish very well, and got the word yermao confused. What he really meant to say was hermano. Now, I know there are modern researchers that have disputed that, and they go against that. But when he says hermano, he also suggests that Guakar is not one of the 5 names of Atabey. It is actually the brother of Yokahu. That's what the word hermano means. In Spanish, hermano means brother. And that Guakar is the brother of Yokahu. Guakar is not one of the names of Atabey. It's the name of a brother, of a male semi, a male entity, Guakar. There is an analysis that comes from the word Guakar, which Peter, in his research, he got most of it right. Guakar, the word Guakar comes from the addition, putting together of the word wa, which means our. He got that right. He's right about that. Wa means ours. Wa. Then kar or kairi has something to do with something that happens every month. And we all know what happens every month, the menstrual cycle of women. So wakairi, Peter's right on the money with that one. Our monthly cycles, or our moon cycles, so to speak. And so that would lead a person to believe, okay, that's an appropriate name for a female spirit like Atabey. So we should, that's a name for her. But the problem is that that's not where the issue ends. When we go into the research of both Arawakan and Caribbean, these are the people of Carib origin, the Kalinago, the Garifuna, other people, the Makiritare, the Iguana, we find a series of legends in which there is always, in every one of these legends, in every one of these myths, there's always a male character who ends up causing monthly cycles and bleeding, uterine bleeding in women. And this is a male entity. In some of the legends, this male entity is actually identified as the moon. itself. So we can't ignore that. We can't ignore the fact that there's a whole group of legends in the Orinoco River Basin, among all these tribes, in the homeland where the ancestors of the Taino came from, where this entity that causes menstrual cramps and cycles in women is not a female, but a male. In the Makiritare, he's called Nuna. The Desana call him the moon twin of the sun god, of the sun spirit. The Lokono call him the moon brother. And you can go on and on and on and on and on with these male entities. So if we go back and reanalyze the word wakairi, which Peter analyzed, I've got work here done by Joseph Campbell, who is an expert, he's dead now, who was an expert on mythology of the world, different mythologies of the world. And he actually breaks down the word wakairi a little bit further than what Peter Morla did. The way he puts it, wa, yes, means our. Ka means harsh, forceful. And iri is something that happens every month. So what I have come to, the way he says there, typically is the moon. Wakar, which is here his name, is composed of the pronominal prefix wa, our, and kati or kairi, moon or month. Kairi itself being compounded of the noun ka, which is force, and iri, which is menstruation. So what have we got now? We've got a character, a male character, who is responsible for forceful menstrual cramps, what I have called harsh menstrual cramps. In these myths, especially the Desana, from the Desana tribe, and the Makiritare tribe, in both tribes, these menstrual cramps are not normal. They're not the usual lunar, menstrual cramps that proclaim that a woman is fertile. Instead, they're actually signs of a disorder, of something that is wrong. In the case of the Desana myth, when the moon brother, the twin brother of the sun spirit, attempts to make love to his wife, to his mate, to the sun's mate, the young woman, the young deity, female deity, she gets so sick and starts bleeding and bleeding that she almost dies. That doesn't sound like normal menstruation. That is a harsh menstruation. That is a sign of illness. In the case of the Makiritare, it's not the twin brother of the sun. It's the twin brother. It's the brother of the female mother spirit. She is trying to hatch the primordial egg, and in the Makiritare legend is called Watuna. The legend is called the Watuna. It's the legend cycle of the Makiritare, the creation cycle. And in this cycle, this female entity is trying to hatch the primordial egg from which all humanity is going to be born. And she puts it in her womb. And it's in there gestating when her brother comes and tries to take it out so that he can eat the people that are inside gestating. She fights him off and he runs away. And, she's able to save the people. Later on, she turns into an anaconda snake and gives birth to the people already, later. So she saves them from her brother, the moon. In that case, also, she bleeds extensively, and it's not something good. What he does to her, what he gives her, is not something good. So in all these legends, the moon spirit, this male moon spirit, seems to have a very negative connotation. A connotation that gives him the kind of like the notoriety of being a troublemaker. Going back to Taino tradition, wakairi are harsh menstrual cramps. We believe that it is one of the two manifestations of the moon spirit. The moon spirit has a manifestation that is beneficial, that blossoms and allows women to be fertile. We call that one, we give that one a name that we borrow from the Kalinago language, okay, and it's Karaya. And in that manifestation, the moon spirit is a female, and she is the one that allows women to menstruate in a normal fashion in a way that makes them fertile. However, this menstrual entity has another side, and that's the manifestation of challenge, harsh experiences. That is GUAKAR, wakairi, our harsh menstrual cramps. And this is harsh experiences not just for women, but in the mentality of the Taino people, it extends to the whole tribe. Wakairi represents challenges for everybody. So anytime a person has a challenge that comes up in front of them in their life, he identifies it as wakairi, even if it's a man. In the same way that we in English would say, well, she's a pain in the butt. Well, we're not talking literally. We're not saying that that person really gives us a pain in the behind. We're just saying that that person is a problem. We have to manifest, we have to interpret the word wakairi in the same way. Figure of speech, a metaphor. Wakairi is not just literally all the time a harsh menstrual cramp. Wakairi is any problem that manifests in the life of a human being. That is wakar. Wakar.